to the Executive Outlook. Today's guest is a data and analytics leader with over 14 years of experience building data strategies, teams, and platforms across retail, finance, e-commerce, and now aviation. Welcome, Aritra Acharya. He is the head of data and analytics based out of Barcelona. He's working in an Fly, which is an aviation company. So he's originally from Calcutta. He has worked across India, UK, Netherlands, and Spain, leading data warehousing, governance, and analytics initiatives at various companies. He is especially passionate about two things that matters most to the organizations and what the organizations struggle with. That is the data literacy and data governance. Today, we are going to talk about why so many companies have great analytics that nobody actually uses, how to build trust in data across an organization, and what it really takes to roll out data literacy at scale. Welcome to the Executive.
Thank you very much, Isha. Thank you for inviting me to this conversation. Thank you for giving me the platform to share what I have learned in the past 14 years and looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much.
In the past 14 years, I started my career as a data engineer in India in a consulting area, working in a different project. And since then, I have always remained in this space. So I'm looking forward to all the questions and all the answers which we can use to help the industry back.
Amazing. I'm very excited for the discussion today. Yes. So let's hear about your journey that you mentioned that you have been into this space from last 14 years and then the data engineer term was not even exist. So how did it all begin?
It's actually a funny story, Isha. I think in 2012, when I first started working, after my training program, I got a project which was into the domain of business intelligence. And I had no idea about it, what this is. Obviously, as a fresh graduate from student, I heard about it, but no idea what it does and how to use it. And to be honest, initially, I was a bit not happy with it because all my friends were in a different the project. But okay, I start working in this project as a data engineer. And back then, this term was not even existing. So my role, you remember, was like data warehouse developer, where I was writing scripts, bringing data into the warehouse. The architecture also used to be different. After a certain months, I realized the best fun part about it, that when you work in such a big project, you can see the impact of directly what you are doing when the work you are doing goes into a dashboard. And people are actually asking questions about it. And as a young professional, that really motivates you. So my objective was, okay, I will be an expert in this domain, and then I'll move to a different one, different programming area. But the moment I got better into it, I explored. So there is more to it. I went into data warehouse designing and modeling. And then after a few years, okay, now we go to reporting. Then we go into governance and business intelligence. So sometimes I make a joke to my young team members that data domain is like octopus. It will never let you go. There will always be something new which we have to catch up, which is in general quite normal for tech industry, but this area is so vast and so fast evolving that I have decided to stay in this space for much longer. Although now I focus more into how this focuses into the business side of it, in the business acumen and how these two can come close together. So I enjoy more working in the bridging that gap area.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that and how you actually stepped up in your career to be at this stage. So then during our conversation, you made a very interesting point that a company can have the great analytics, but still nobody uses it. So this is the problem around many organizations. So what do you think why this happens and what is really going on within the organization that user adoption is not?
Okay. This is a very common problem which you have noticed in multiple companies. Doesn't matter big or small. And it starts with, and I must say, I have been through this. I have been through the same mistake doing. I'm doing my best analysis with my team, with other developers, building a fantastic data model, which in my opinion is going to make this company like in billions, make all the problems go away. But the input with our core users, the signals that were saying something else. Initially, it looks the requirement which from our core stakeholders could be that we know how to analyze certain data, but what I would like to expect from you is easy access to that data. That is one of the examples. In some cases, we notice they're asking for a very specific question, but instead of answering a question, we are giving him a model, which in our opinion is the best. The biggest challenge for user adoption is that it needs to meet their requirements. That is the fundamental experience I have gained. We can do the best we can, but at the end, it has to meet their requirement. And many of the cases, we notice the things we developed, which we never thought would actually be useful, started a new attention to a project because someone in one of the corner was actually using that with a very low footprint. And the bridge between these two is slowly the industry is evolving. One thing you will notice, the business teams and the analytics teams are working closer. Some of them even has a product owner from the business, someone who understands the business and actually working very close hand in hand. And this helps with adoption. And this also helps with constant feedback loop. Because when people use it, it can be not 100%, it can be 80%. But this also means the feedback loop starts much earlier in the journey. And that is how we can also deal with this in fast changing environment.
So we are getting the feedback and then we are implementing it, what they are expecting, and accordingly creating the solution for them.
Exactly.
In their language, what they needed.
Yeah.
So that is important. That will help us to have more adoption because they understand their language, they understand what they need, they have given the problem statement, so that feedback loops are very important.
Definitely. And to be honest, the feedback loop, as early as it starts, better it is for the team, better for the company. We can wait for a 3-month project, but then the feedback, we are already too late. And we are seeing this with different approach, how with Agile, with DevOps, how we can do these things faster.
So today we are going to discuss about the data literacy. In very simple terms, for you, what do you mean by data literacy?
I'm smiling because this is a question I have answered to C-level in one of my jobs multiple times. And I would not say I was very successful in explaining in words, but I will still try. Let's say in theory, it's very simple. In theory, it's like someone, when your company can understand, most of the organization understands, speaks, can write, and also explain data. Now, this is a very theoretical definition. In reality, it's much, much different. In reality, I always use the example that when we share a dashboard or when we share a brief analysis, it is not just, okay, so we look at June, there is 7 million revenue, 5 million cost, and that's it, or some other product or category level numbers. Now, this is only a picture. This is only a picture what has already happened. But the question is, when we are able to successfully able to explain why this has happened and which data points might even be changing the number or making impact on those numbers, how we can reduce cost. Let's say sometimes one very common pattern we notice is that we are seeing that our costs are never adding up. And okay, there is something with finance. It was not. It was just one data column which was not even entered correctly. And that is the impact was that we are getting misleading cost inside. Now, the impact when we talk about it is only cost, but it's not only cost, it's also profitability, working capitals, and also our revenue model. So in short words, not outside of your data team, because we always think data literacy is for data team. No, it's actually for outside. Outside the data team, people understand the consequences of having good data and bad data and can figure out where we need to focus. That is when we say, I would say, we have achieved the data literacy, at least at a basic level. In one of the corporation where we have implemented it, and we made it in 3 or 4 different levels: basic, advanced, and someone who can work in a self-service BI level. And the extreme advanced works for the data team itself, because we always have to, there is no end to learning. So at basic level, it is more about someone who is able to read it. In the second level, who can read, understand, and do some basic analysis themselves. And in the third category, it is more the people who can tweak it, who can identify that I'm seeing this pattern because in one of the systems, in the revenue systems, this data is not entered correctly, or it is of poor quality. And that is when they can track the lineage, not only where its impact, and also connect it to where it's happening. In my opinion, that is where you get the most valuable outcomes because you are independent of going back to data team every time and can have these findings by yourself. That is what I would say for me. In example, how data literacy works in bigger organizations.
If someone in the business wants a solution, they're facing a challenge and they want to see the data reporting side of it or any other, they have the data requirement. So how you take the inputs from them, from the stakeholders or the users, that you are delivering the right solutions to them as per their expectations. So what is your practice of getting that requirements? Yeah.
In the industry or in general in life, you will notice we always say, I need this. I need to have this set up in the kitchen, or in a business problem, I need to have this dashboard. And I always say challenge that. Challenge that because they're saying I need this, which means he already knows or thinks that is the solution. But many times we use a different method, whether we do a root cause analysis or sometimes we do 5 why mechanisms. So why do you need it? Okay, I need this dashboard to have insight on this. Why is that insight important? Because this insight will provide me to act on this. Why do you need to perform that action? So when we do this 5 times, we many times see the solution is not what we actually think, because someone who was trying to monitor a live program through a static dashboard, that would never work. Or sometimes we think that a dashboard should tell me how many resources I should align to a specific shift to have enough resources. Now that answer might not even be in that dashboard, because very soon it's also about understanding what the next question might be. Because when we start gathering insight about a specific resource management, let's say, the next question would be, how do we prepare, or how can insights tell me how many resources I should put in the reserve for my next shift? And as a data professionals, we have to understand the question behind the question and where it might lead in 3 months. So that is a practice we need to keep doing and ask questions to your stakeholder. Why do you need this? And many times, to be honest, after initially, it always goes with a little bit of conflict that I need this. But I think if you can prove, I always say in the company, in the teams, get one sponsor who believes in you in the process, and then show the value, how it has benefited them. Then helping with that, then scaling that process becomes way more convenient. So in short, I would say practice asking more questions, the why, not just how or what.
Amazing. So that way you go to the ground level. Okay, if it actually needed, or if it is not needed, or we need to tweak the requirements and then test it with a small area like a POC or certain, by giving the manual data, that is it serving you or not. And if that is serving, then in that scenario, okay, let's scale it. Let's
precisely
go back and work on the actual implementation and save the resources, budget it out. According to you, what the good governance look like, and where do the most of the organization go wrong?
This is data governance until now, but implementing is the most challenging project I would say I've worked in my entire life. Because many of the times, one is that why do we need it? Explaining that can many times be very difficult. And also it requires budget, which means you need a strong sponsor. And the third point is we also need tooling and processes. Out of all of this, we forget one thing, and that is the people part of data governance. In many cases, we invest on tooling, we have meetings in place, and we have data quality checks in place. But guess the common part, who uses the tool, who makes sure this is being followed up, and who also provides insight that what are the impacts of this, and that is people, before the company culture or the awareness has already been changed. And if you say, when I did the same mistake, I went to a very senior management and said, I need to implement this. Let's get the Colibra for data quality. Let's get data governance board in place. But the fact is, people have to sincerely participate in those meetings, then go back and then implement those changes and come back with the values which are generated. So the major challenge you will see in this domain is the follow through. It's easy to start data governance, but it's not easy to follow through the process. And the second one is ownership. When I say ownership, you will notice that many cases people think I own this data means I will decide everything about it. That's not the case. Data governance is actually meant for sharing, and how smoothly or accurately we can enforce that. And notice that all the touch points are people, none of them are tool. And the third part is also coming back. Sometimes we identify, we notice that, let's say for a specific data set, we have 91 completeness, which may be good or bad, but are we even following that? Do we want to go to 95%? And do we trade off for now? That is okay because it's a much more resource heavy. So these conversations need to be decision driven, not just discussion focused. And I think with a clear framework and right people on the table, this would work even better than just tools and processes. This is the only place where I feel that tools and very much paperwork can actually make you slower. It is about not pushing it down, but by showing the impact of it, making people want to have it in place. And that is where I think is the main focus. Next time, if I try it, that is where my focus would.
So we need to go with people and follow it through instead of just starting it and understanding what are the challenges they are facing. And even this part, I like which you mentioned about the ownership, that people say, okay, this is my data, I can do anything, I'm the owner of this, right? But actually, that is not true. We have to be thinking from a different approach, sharing that, getting the insight. Really relatable. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. So, do you want to share certain use cases where really the data has impacted the business through data driven strategies? So, how the business was impacted?
One of the example I remember is that there was, I'm not using any names, but I'm just giving a team. So the focus was very much into doing things very fast. And that is needed for someone who wants to grow fast. It's very important that we get insights as soon as possible. And while we are doing that, there was a case where people prepared very, how do you say, by hook or by crook data models, because we need to provide numbers. And while doing that, it was done in a very critical way that it can break anytime. Now, one thing you learn when you work in the industry for very long, something is which works for 100 gigabytes would not work for 1 TB. This means someone who has a very strong need for doing analysis or modeling very fast, which also means the company or the area is going to be very soon 1 TB. When we are doing this, when we are doing the model or building the data platform or landscape, we should not prepare it for today. We should prepare it for a year. I understand there can be cost restraints or cost challenges, but then we should go for the very basic version of it, because within 6 months, that landscape is going to be totally abolished. It will fail, and the team would spend more time in resolving all the issues rather than making it scale. Absolutely. So either do it first time right, and if the cost is not enough, go with the basic version but never compromise the basic platform for cost. I understand in the industry, we have many trade-offs to do. That is how you grow, that sometimes we choose a temporary solution, but also look at the ROI. If you have to redo your entire platform again in 6 months, that is not a sustainable model. Finance would not like that.
Absolutely. So we need to plan before execution and plan it in a way that it should not break the things in future.
And I have seen this happening where we literally had to redo the architecture in 6 months. I mean, to be honest, this also, I was part of the decision. So I also learned the hard way, but I would say this was a very big impact because we were struggling with 80% of the team's capacity in resolving issues than actually scaling. So this was a major problem.
Sometimes being, ahead into the analytics and data, and you're building this infrastructure. So sometimes we have to listen to business, what is their expectations. So if they want a fast thing, whatever you can do best, you were able to do that, right? So, but we need the budgeting, we need the resources in order to plan it out in a right way, right? So that needs to be understood from the C-level executives as well, that this is something needs to be built for future, and we need to build the scalable systems, right? So sometimes in that need, because of fast execution, we also have to follow what has been going and what the business is deciding. Yeah.
I think as a part of the leading analytics team, you live every day through negotiations and trade-offs. You have to make that with a different level. And I think it also helps you to understand that I can spend 1 million in building a data platform very soon. But at the end, it also has to generate value so that we have to think from a return on investment purposes. It either has to impact the NPS or the customer experience or have to reduce the customer service cost. And sometimes at the end, we have to talk about the bottom line. So this negotiation part, I would say, is one of the biggest learnings since you start moving into leadership roles.
Sure. And specifically, this is one of the things also as leading the data teams, you need to like negotiate it for the budget, resources, every single thing that is because that is more technical and that
Yes.
is something to a CEO and other representatives, stakeholders, it is very difficult to explain to them that why we need it, why, because it is more into
Yes.
a technical platform. So that conversation with the logics that, hey, this is what the current stage is, this will be the future stage, and I need certain areas, I need these resources, I need this budget, this will be the costing of cloud or other areas, right? So we need to tell them, convince them that yes, we need it and get the budgets approval. So that is also altogether one of the discussions that we need to have it
Yes,
as.
we see this very often happening is that the engineering team wants to do it the best possible way and the business wants the first outcome. And while both of them are right at the correct place, I think as leaders in the engineering or in data, our job is to basically maintaining that balance. We do not want doing fast to create too much of technical debt, but at the same time, doing things right way, I cannot wait for 6 months for a fundamental insight. So it's really balancing the way between these two.
So how do you decide for a build versus buy approach? Suppose you want to implement a data governance, cataloging, right? Or you want to select certain platform. So how do you decide that as an organization we should be building this or we should just buy the platforms and directly start using it for the.
I would love to answer that, but in a broader scope. In general, it's not just about, let's say, and I don't want to talk about just governance, but also for engineering or analytics. So when I was doing hands-on work, my personal goal was I'm going to build it. I'm going to build it the best product, best solution in the world. But I think eventually, when you grow up, I realized there are a few key questions we need to ask to ourselves. For data, is data as a product we sell? Is it a revenue generating or is it a enabling platform? That's one of the answers questions I asked for myself. And the next is the team size and the capabilities which we have in house and in the market. And the third question is, do we even have to scale in a 3 years of time or in a 2 years of time? These three are the key questions I ask myself. The first one is that is data going to be our core product, which is going to be a revenue generating, then probably I would personally prefer to develop. But many of the cases, unless we are not depending on the company or the industry, it is there to provide insights or enable. And with the help of ML or AI, then we think about data products in future, which can be a revenue generating stream. So when we start, I personally would recommend, depending on the size and the affordability of the company, to buy. We start, we learn. There's many platforms which you can do in a cost effective way. Now, when I say cost effective, I see attention from many C-level that it is not cheap if you compare it with other data platforms or where you have to do everything by yourself. But that is when we have to understand cost is not just coming from the platform. Cost is also coming from hiring long-term developers, which can directly, it's basically a CapEx versus OpEx story, that how we want to invest our money into this area. So based on these questions, I would say first, in most of the cases I have seen from leaders, and I have also implemented that myself, first buy, let people learn, and then slowly retire or plan sunset. Because many times we will see that having a data platform is not just about analytics or data analysts or engineers. You also need a cloud platform engineer. Now, we need to understand that's a type of resource which is very expensive for a good reason, but also in many cases, when you outsource or buy as a infrastructure, it is actually cheaper in long run. So it really depends on the organizational strategy and how they want to put their data products in the future. So this is what I have experienced. The answer would really differ on the size of the company and on the strategy, how they want to scale. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And that makes sense also. Like, let's start, let's adopt a tool, let's see how the outcomes are coming. Is it definitely
really beneficial for the organization? And if yes, and people have started adopting it, using it, getting the right outcomes, and then slowly build it. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, your experience across different areas. We talked about literacy, governance, data driven culture, teams, people, how we need to make sure we have the right ownership, and also about the leadership, how to have that leadership business requirements met from that perspective, bridging that gap. So thank you so much. It's really pleasure you having on the executive.
Thank you very much. And I wish you have a good day. It was really nice talking with you and sharing what I have learned so far. And I hope it helps others as well in their journey.
I learned a lot, so I am very much hoping that audience will gonna like it.